At this year's World Economic Forum, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto spoke emphatically about his life's goal.
I'm determined in the next 4 years we will eradicate extreme poverty and we will bring down poverty as a whole. That is my mission in my life. That is my mission in the remaining years of my life.
In Indonesia, though extreme poverty rates are lower than ever, the gap between rich and poor is widening.
Bayangin Mas, 50 orang super kaya di Indonesia itu punya kekayaan setara 50 juta masyarakat Indonesia.
According to Oxfam, in the last 2 decades, the wealth gap in Indonesia grew quicker than any other Southeast Asian country.
Kelompok kelas menengah ini drop menjadi kelas miskin baru, tentu itu saya kira akan berisiko menciptakan instabilitas secara politik ya.
What does inequality look like in the country of 280 million?
Kalau orang tuanya bodoh mungkin, anaknya dia mungkin nggak terlalu kaya mungkin.
And what is being done about it? Jakarta, August 2025. Thousands of Indonesians took to the streets in protest. The outcry was against a plan to give more perks for members of parliament. Even as President Prabowo Subianto began implementing austerity cuts to education, health, and public works. Most of the protesters were young Indonesians. So, Imalis, a 50-year-old mother of 4, stood out.
Ini kita ikhlas loh milih lo jadi wakil kita di situ. Haruslah menyampaikan aspirasi-aspirasi kita yang ada. Bukan lo nginjak kita semati-matinya kita nih.
Imalis has been a ride-hailing driver since 2015. Such app-based services were in their infancy in Indonesia. She could earn up to 20 million rupiah or $1,100 a month, taking passengers and delivering goods around Jakarta. Extra money was used to send her parents to Mecca for a Hajj pilgrimage. She even managed to continue her studies and graduated with a degree in economics. But these days, her takings from ride-hailing have dwindled.
Setelah COVID di 2021 ya kan sampai ke atasnya ini, itu sudah mulai menurun. Menurunnya gini, tambahan lagi, aplikator baru banyak lagi sekarang. Banyak banget. Di saat itulah mulai nih, karena banyaknya aplikator, customer mencari yang murah.
Inali's monthly income has fallen to around 8 million rupiah or around $476 a month. But it's still higher than the minimum wage of 5.39 million rupiah for Jakarta. Her income and that of her husband goes to paying for basic necessities.
Perbedaannya hanya tidak bisa menabung untuk diri sendiri ataupun keluarga. Masalah itu pasti. Tapi disikapi dengan ya dengan banyaknya cawe-cawean aja.
It was the anger over the plan to raise lawmakers' housing allowance to almost 10 times the minimum wage that prompted Inalis to join the protests. When protesters marched, one lawmaker called them the stupidest people in the world. The base monthly pay of a member of parliament is around 4.2 million rupiah in Indonesia. However, according to transparency advocacy group Fitra, once you factor in allowances, attendance bonuses and other perks, lawmakers could be taking home as much as 230 million rupiah or $13,700.
I think the August 2025 protests is a result of unchecked economic struggles and people's frustration. So these economic struggles and frustration have been boiling basically for some time. In terms of inequality, I think the protests are more of a result of the drivers of inequality. Not the inequality itself, but the drivers of inequality, like corruption, poor governance, flawed policies, and distrust towards government and institutions and policymakers.
Income disparity is widening in Asia. In their recent report, Oxfam says economic growth in Asia has been overshadowed by widening inequality, with the richest 10% of Asians taking between 60 and 77% of national income, while the poorest half received only 12 to 15%. Going by Gini, which is a measure of income inequality, Indonesia is in the middle of the pack in Southeast Asia. The economy is also growing at a healthy clip of around 5%. So, why do so many Indonesians still feel hard done?
Indonesia has been able to eradicate extreme poverty, but that's not enough. According to the most recent World Bank report on poverty assessment, 40% of Indonesians are still considered to be economically insecure.
Broadly speaking, inequality happens everywhere, across the world, across many countries, not just Indonesia. And I think that's the crux of the problem of a modern development, where the government cannot really make sure that every individual has equal access to everything, to public services. When we are talking about inequality in Indonesia, we are looking at many classes based on income. There's this term upper class, middle class, and lower class.
Kalau kita mengacu pada data BPS ya, orang yang disebut sebagai kelompok miskin itu adalah orang yang pendapatannya per bulan itu sekitar 600 sampai 700 ribu per bulan. Nah biasanya ukurannya banyak ya, tapi kalau kelas menengah biasanya pendapatannya yang dianggap kelas menengah itu pendapatannya itu 4 kali lipat dibandingkan kelompok miskin. Nah tetapi kalau kita pakai ukuran begitu berarti kan yang dianggap kelas menengah itu adalah orang yang pendapatannya di atas 2.500.000.
People like Analis, the ride-hailing driver, belong to the middle-class category, a crucial group for Indonesia's consumption-driven economy. They account for around 70% of Indonesia's population of 284 million. But working in the informal sector or gig economy means she lacks social protection.
Indonesia's unemployment rate is below 5% or like hovering around 5%. So that's pretty low. But this is not a good number to assess how good is our labor market. What we are seeing right now is that in Indonesia's labor market, because of lack to good quality jobs, then even those who are highly educated, those who have college, university degrees, they have to take up like menial jobs, like, low-end jobs, like online drivers, cleaners, waiters, and so on and so forth.
Siapapun bisa bekerja, tapi kan di tahun 2026 ya, ini kita menginginkan pekerjaan yang berkualitas. Makanya pertanyaannya, gig ekonomi kita itu berkualitas nggak pekerjaannya? Itu pertanyaan yang mungkin harus dijawab ketimbang kuantitas dari jumlah pekerja di gig ekonomi Indonesia.
This has led to the worrying decline of the middle class. Official data shows the number of people in the middle class in Indonesia has been shrinking since 2018.
Pukulan terbesar memang ketika itu karena ada COVID, di mana banyak dari kelas menengah kehilangan pekerjaan dan banyak perusahaan-perusahaan juga yang kemudian kehilangan potensi income karena adanya pembatasan, karena harus beradaptasi dengan situasi yang berubah. Ya. Kalau itu tidak dibenahi, tentu juga akan menciptakan risiko dan kerentanan dari sisi politik, karena bagaimanapun kelompok kelas menengah ini mereka pembayar pajak, kelompok pembayar pajak ya, punya pendidikan tinggi, pendapatan tinggi dan aktif secara politik. Kelompok kelas menengah ini drop menjadi kelas miskin baru, tentu itu saya kira akan berisiko menciptakan instabilitas secara politik ya.
Inequality is high stakes in Indonesia. It was one of the reasons behind the widespread protests which led to the downfall of President Suharto's government. Concurrently, there were violent anti-Chinese riots which blamed the Indonesian Chinese for hoarding wealth.
Kalau kita lihat tahun 98 di Indonesia, Stabilitas ekonomi kita bagus, ekonomi makro kita bagus, pertumbuhan 7-9% bahkan. Kurs rupiah juga bagus. Tapi apa yang menyebabkan hari itu runtuh? Karena ketimpangan yang parah. Karena kekayaan dimiliki oleh segelintir orang di sekitar Soeharto.
After COVID, the gulf between the rich and the poor is widening again, as the wealthy recovered much quicker from the pandemic.
Kenapa itu bisa terjadi? Karena mereka memiliki tangible asset bahkan yang itu terus mengalami peningkatan valuasi dari waktu ke waktu. Jadi ini juga salah satu fakta yang menyakitkan. Jadi pasca COVID banyak masyarakat miskin, banyak bisnis kecil rontok gitu ya. Tetapi orang-orang super kaya ini justru meraup keuntungan sangat besar pada saat terjadi COVID. Bayangin Mas, 50 orang super kaya di Indonesia itu punya kekayaan setara 50 juta masyarakat Indonesia.
So, what are the current roots of inequality in Indonesia? Bogor, West Java. Minta grows rice and vegetables to support his family. He inherited the rice field and vegetable gardens from his father, who was also a farmer.
Ini tanaman padi, cuma luasnya 2000 meter. Padinya untuk dimakan sendiri aja, untuk biaya di rumah, ibu, rumah tangga gitu. Kalau saya ada singkong, ubi, baru dijual itu. Ada lagi apa, bunga-bunga mungkin ada dijual ya.
Minta is 60 years old. He's been taking care of the rice field since he was 15.
Sampai kelas 2 saya ke sekolah, tapi nggak ada biaya, cuma orang tua nggak ada lagi. Jadi saya cari kerja aja, masih kecil cari kerja kemana-mana. Udah gitu sampai sekarang kerjanya berhenti, terus saya langsung tani lah, begitu.
A harvest of cassava, yam and vegetables can earn Minta between 300,000 to 1 million rupiah each month, around 18 to 60 US dollars. The money is used to cover necessities and expenses, including buying fertilizers. He receives no assistance from the local government.
Mungkin sayanya kurang bergaul mungkin ya, nggak tahu apa-apa. Cumanya tani aja, beli sendiri, cangkul sama alat-alat itu beli sendiri.
Minta has 4 children and 6 grandchildren. A son works as a ride-hailing driver, another at a factory. One daughter works at a beauty salon, while another is a housewife. They never finished senior high school.
Mungkin ya, kalau nggak ada modalnya ya susah tuh Pak. Mungkin cuma orang tuanya, kalau orang tuanya sekolahnya tinggi, berwibawa, berpendidikan tinggi, mungkin bisa sama aja sama orang tua kaya juga. Kalau orang tuanya bodoh mungkin, anaknya dia mungkin nggak terlalu kaya, mungkin cuma cukup buat sendiri aja mungkin ya.
West Java, where Minta lives, is one of the 10 provinces with the highest inequality in Indonesia. The Gini ratio in West Java stands at 0.416, higher than the national level of 0.375. The Gini coefficient is a statistical measure that explains the gap between the richest and poorest in a country's income or wealth distribution. It's represented by a figure between 0 and 1, with 0 being perfect equality and 1 being perfect inequality.
A family or a household can be trapped in a vicious cycle, meaning trapped in a intergenerational poverty, and because of this, then it makes it more difficult to reduce inequality.
Saya lihat sebagian besar dari petani kita itu menggarap daerah-daerah dengan skup yang kecil gitu. Dan sebagian besar juga dari petani itu menggarap tanah atau sawah yang bukan kepemilikannya sendiri. Jadi mereka menyewa kepada para pemilik sawah gitu, kemudian bagi hasil dengan daerah yang juga sawah yang terbatas. Juga teknologi pertanian kita memang sudah dikembangkan dengan baik, tapi juga beberapa petani kita juga belum mengadopsinya dengan baik, mungkin karena keterbatasan modal, harus membeli mesin-mesin yang mahal atau menggunakan pupuk-pupuk berbiaya tinggi gitu ya. Itu juga akhirnya menurunkan produktivitas petani.
Agriculture, manufacturing, mining and services are among the main drivers of Indonesia's economy. Agriculture is important for poverty reduction, according to the World Bank. But for young Indonesians, the big cities are more enticing.
Karena kita kalau bicara tentang Indonesia kan harus dibedakan antara perkotaan, perdesaan, Jawa, luar Jawa, begitu ya, pesisir, pergunungan dan sebagainya. Tapi kalau kita mencoba melihat ya di perdesaan, di perkampungan begitu, itu banyak anak muda yang sebetulnya berhenti sampai level SMA, kemudian karena tidak terserap ke pasar kerja, terus orientasi mereka kepada sektor pertanian sangat lemah begitu ya, karena kan dianggap sebagai pekerjaan yang terlalu beresiko begitu ya. Nah, mereka juga kan ingin mendapatkan pekerjaan yang mudah.
Sehingga mereka harus migrasi ke kota untuk mendapatkan pekerjaan yang lebih baik. Tapi padahal ketika nyampe kota juga mereka harus bertarung dan tidak mudah juga.
Plying the streets of Jakarta, Indra Mulyadi sells foodstuff from his bicycle. In 2024, he moved from Indramayu in West Java to seek his fortune in the capital.
Ini saya kan sebagai Starling menjual kayak aneka minuman, terus pop mie. Ada juga kopi-kopi panas, ini sudah disediain semua. Dan dipersiapin kayak es batu, air isi ulang buat es, air panas buat bikin kopi.
Indra is 21 years old. His parents are farmers. He graduated from a vocational senior high school in Indramayu, majoring in car engineering.
Kan di Indramayu jarang lah kerjaan, PT-PT belum ada, kayak pabrik belum ada. Makanya saya coba cari pengalaman di Jakarta, pengen merantau ke Jakarta.
Indra earns between 150,000 and 350,000 rupiah a day, or between $9 and $21 US. After paying for bicycle rent, buying ingredients and food, he can bring home at least 100,000 rupiah, or around $6 US. His employer provides lodging.
Ya, dia miskin, emang saya miskin. Soal kan orang tua kerjaan cuma petani, mayoritas petani. Udah gitu. Kalau saya sih ya harus tetap kerja lah, nggak boleh males-malesan. Ada keinginan. Kalau udah dapat modal usaha di sini, saya pengen pulang ke Indramayu, buka usaha kecil-kecilan lah di sana, kayak warung, kayak nasi, jual nasi, tapi nyari modal dulu dari sini.
Indra is considered an informal worker. The number of informal workers has grown in Indonesia from around 74 million in 2019 to around 84 million in 2024. Almost 60% of employment. Most are hired by small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, the backbone of the Indonesian economy.
SMEs in Indonesia, they are not structured. The way they operate business is very informal. There is no guarantee of if you work for SMEs, you will get all the social security protection. You won't get any, for example, long hours protection.
More jobs are being created in the informal sector than in the formal sectors. Inequality in terms of quality of jobs can create widening gaps in terms of incomes, in terms of earnings.
And while the economy and foreign direct investment have grown, that has not quite translated to quality job creation.
We are attracting investment. We are seizing all the foreign direct investment opportunities into the country. But I think that goes into a sector which is heavily extractive and does not really create job. So I think that is the key problem of inequality in Indonesia.
During the Jokowi era, there was a push to expand mining and to domesticize the processing of raw commodities, such as nickel. On the other hand, the manufacturing sector, an important source of jobs, has remained stagnant.
Indonesia has a potential to become a modernized agricultural country. It has a potential to become a strong manufacturing hub, which is labor intensive. But I think the mindset of the government looking at the economic sector is still pretty much extractive. We are talking about how to increase the value of raw materials, but at the end of the day, if you look at the supply chain, we are stuck just on the upstream to midstream, and that's it. Once we process that raw material and then we export, we are not building the entire supply chain until downstream.
Perusahaan tambang itu usaha ekstraktif dan itu bisnis modelnya hanya jangka pendek. Implikasinya adalah masyarakat di sekitar itu mungkin hanya akan menerima manfaat itu pada saat tambang itu ada. Dan ketika tambang itu habis, masyarakat nggak punya alternatif ekonomi lagi. Itu kenapa kita sering menyaksikan ada banyak masyarakat di sekitar tambang itu malah semakin rentan setelah tambang ditutup.
Meanwhile, in the last year, the wealth of the 50 richest Indonesians surged by 16%. Some made their wealth from these extractive industries.
So rich people usually owns not only bank deposits, they also own financial assets, they own property, and even without working, they can earn some income from the returns of these financial and capital assets. That can widen inequality between the rich and the poor.
Economically insecure Indonesians can be pushed into poverty upon shocks like COVID-19 or natural disasters, which have increased in frequency and severity due to climate change. More than 1,000 people were killed in Sumatra in December after torrential rains triggered floods and landslides. Hundreds of thousands were displaced.
When we're talking about the floods in Aceh, North Sumatra and West Sumatra, it is an example of how individuals in Indonesia have low social safety nets. They lost their homes, they lost their jobs, they lost everything, and that leaves them without nothing, right?
Then, there's another side of inequality to examine in Indonesia: the disparity between regions. Shera Nuban is a university student. The 20-year-old lives in Kupang, capital of East Nusa Tenggara Province. When she graduates in 2029, she hopes to become a teacher.
Kalau udah lulus nanti jadi guru seni budaya. Kalau jadi guru seni budaya biasanya mengajar tentang tarian daerah, tentang musik, tentang teater, dan juga tentang menenun juga.
Shera comes from a farming family. She's able to study at the state-run Institute of Christian Education because of a scholarship, but it only covers part of her tuition. So, she weaves traditional cloths to help pay for the rest. A skill Shera learned from her mother, an accomplished weaver in her village. It can take up to 2 months to make a shawl, which she sells for up to 500,000 rupiah, or $30 depending on the size.
Mama aku nenun, aku duduk mengamati, sudah itu aku minta mama ngajarin. Di situ aku mulai coba dan akhirnya ada hasilnya juga pas SD. Waktu itu SD kelas 5 ya, udah bisa nenun.
For her studies, Shera had to leave her village about 10 hours drive from Kupang. Kupang is located on the Indonesian part of Timor Island and is about 2,600 kilometers east of Jakarta. More than 1,000 islands make up the province of East Nusa Tenggara, with Kupang as the trade education, administrative, and tourism hub. Because of its archipelagic makeup, inequality in Indonesia is not just between classes, it's also geographical. Shara witnessed her peers leave their hometown for opportunities elsewhere.
Itu faktornya yang tadi saya bilang, lapangan kerjanya nggak ada. Kalau di Kalimantan sih mayoritasnya kerjanya kelapa sawit. Kalau kayak misalnya di Medan, di Jakarta, kalau perempuannya itu kerjanya di rumah tangga, di restoran. Tergantung dapat kerjanya di mana ya, kerjanya di situ.
Shara's older brother works at a palm oil plantation in Kalimantan. But Shara hopes her education can change her family's fortunes.
Sebenarnya nggak punya harapan untuk lanjut kuliah, tapi pas SMA itu aku sama mama aku Nenun siapkan kain supaya pakainya untuk jual untuk daftar kuliah. Jadi kalau untuk harapan dari orang tua aku sih harapannya aku jadi orang sukses gitu.
Education is often regarded as a way for the poor to uplift themselves. However, in Indonesia, the opportunities are not equally distributed. Of the country's top 10 universities, 9 are on Java, Indonesia's most populous island. Java also has the most developed infrastructure, with the densest road networks and most of the archipelago's intercity rails.
Kalau saya mau bilang bahwa sebenarnya kami warga di NTT itu memang terus mengalami diskriminasi. Kenapa? Karena semua kebijakan-kebijakan itu masih mengarah kepada pusat-pusat ekonomi yang ada di Jawa. Kemudian kebijakan-kebijakan juga yang ada itu masih bersifat seragam atau Jakarta sentris atau Jawa sentris yang tidak memperhitungkan konteks sosial budaya ataupun topografi yang ada di luar Jawa seperti di NTT.
Diskriminasi, menurut saya diskriminasi Indonesia Timur, Indonesia Barat, Indonesia Tengah, baik dari aspek SDM, sumber daya dan lain-lain.
I think in the case of Indonesia, the problem of inequality is because of the intersection between policy and the geographical facts. And the government itself has been trying to redistribute the resources beyond Java. That happened during the Jokowi administration.
Indonesia has 38 provinces. Jakarta tops the list with the highest average monthly wage, while East Nusa Tenggara is among the 5 provinces with the lowest.
Ketika secara ekonomi keluarga tidak berdaya, mereka akan mengajak anak perempuan untuk turut bertanggung jawab, begitu ya. Kenapa selain anak perempuan yang harus bertanggung jawab? Karena mereka melihat bahwa model-model pekerjaan yang ada di desa dan lain-lain itu tidak memberikan ruang kepada anak perempuan untuk misalnya berkebun, bertani dan lain-lain, tapi mereka diajak untuk pergi keluar, bermigrasi untuk melakukan pekerjaan-pekerjaan misalnya di Jawa, di Bali, di Kalimantan begitu, tapi juga bisa bermigrasi ke luar daerah, luar negeri, dan mereka sangat rentan terhadap tindak pidana perdagangan orang.
What we are seeing is that female labor force participation is hovering around 54%, right? Compared to 80% for male. And one of the key reasons is because there is a difficulty in terms of transitioning from school to work.
Indonesia's Human Capital Index stands at 0.5, according to the World Bank, and lower than the other ASEAN countries. The index is a measure of a population's knowledge, skills, and health over their lives. A score of 1 means a country is maximizing its talent potential.
The lack of access to education is the crux of the problem of why inequality persists in the country. Businesses have acknowledged this. A lot of foreign investment have come into the country, but once they set up the company, they face problem of finding good talents.
Because of the regional disparity in investment, even when armed with an education, finding suitable work locally can be a challenge. Kinta Pelokila has a degree in mining engineering from the state-run Cendana University in Kupang, but she couldn't find a job that matched her skills. So last year, the 23-year-old started a laundry business instead. Her shop, Laundry Headquarters, is open 24 hours. She employs 9 people. 4 are university graduates.
Dari awal sejak saya membuka lowongan untuk merekrut karyawan, agak sedikit kaget karena kebanyakan yang mendaftar itu adalah orang-orang dengan tingkat pendidikan sarjana S1. Waktu saya membuka lowongan itu, Bu, ada sekitar 300-an CV yang masuk. 50% itu mungkin sarjana. Pengeluhan bahwa untuk di Kota Kupang saja ini, mereka yang sarjana juga mencari kerjanya sulit. Bekerja tidak sesuai dengan bidang ilmu yang mereka miliki.
Like Quinta, Hudson Talan is also a university graduate. The 25-year-old has a degree in Indonesian language from the state-run Teachers College in Kupang. But now he sells coffee from his makeshift stall by the beach in the afternoon and is a ride-hailing driver in the morning. His wife hawks meatball dishes.
Oh, kalau kerja seperti ini saya tidak malu. Karena kalau malu ya pasti tidak makan. Kalau di Kupang, kalau menurut saya kesenjangan sosial ya masih kurang lapangan pekerjaan dengan pertumbuhan ekonomi di sini kurang bagus. Nah, karena faktor itu jadi dampak ke masyarakat kurang merasakan begitu.
Hudson has failed 2 tests to become a civil servant. He will try again.
Karena kalau jadi PNS punya jaminan, di hari tua kan ada jaminan dari pemerintah. Kalau jualan seperti ini, kalau kita sudah tidak kuat lagi, otomatis kita susah mendapat uang.
Nah, mayoritas di sini tuh masih mayoritas jadi PNS kepinginnya. Nah, kami lagi dorong saat ini di NTT ini untuk teman-teman perbankan, Bank Indonesia, dan berbagai ekosistem lainnya, kampus. Kita dorong agar orang NTT ini jangan lagi berpikir jadi PNS lagi. Lebih banyak menjadi entrepreneurship. Memang kalau dilihat 17 provinsi timur ini yang kita belah tadi setengah dengan Jawa terutama memang itu perbedaannya tajam. Tapi yang hebat dari timur ini adalah mereka yang punya sumber daya alamnya. Mereka yang punya sumber-sumber daya alam yang memang itu lagi menggerakkan mereka juga untuk menjadi lebih sejahtera. Kalau saya sih sejak era Pak Jokowi kan sudah ada mindset yang berubah nih. Kemudian juga prakteknya sudah mulai dirubah, Indonesia sentris. Pak Jokowi merubah bahwa Indonesia sentris itu artinya semua titik republik ini bisa jadi pusat pertumbuhan. Nah, saya melihat dengan perspektif Pak Jokowi yang juga saya lihat Pak Prabowo juga, prinsipnya saya lihat juga sama.
Emmanuel was sworn in as a governor in 2025 for a 5-year term. He hopes to boost the province's economy through tourism. Komodo Island, a UNESCO site and home to endangered Komodo dragons, is part of the province. Agriculture is the biggest contributor to the province's economy, with 60% of the population involved in the sector.
Dan saya percaya sejauh kita konsisten, kami di provinsi dan juga pemerintah pusat konsisten, mudah-mudahan pertumbuhan ekonomi lebih merata dan semua bisa menggerakkan pertumbuhan melalui potensi masing-masing dan mendekatkan lagi kesenjangan yang ada antara timur dan barat ini.
But there are growing concerns of a return to centralization under the current administration.
I mean, if you look at the policy of state allocation to the local government in terms of budget, we can clearly see that there will be a significant reduction of budget from central government to local government. And as part of that, the central government has said that if you need more money, if the local government needs more money for infrastructure development, you come to us and we'll provide you with loans. So I think that is a clear picture of how inequality still happens in Indonesia, and I think it's a combination of a policy as well as the geography.
Will President Prabowo's populism agenda address inequality or widen the gap? Maria Nofita Guterres lives in Kupang. Life for her is hard.
Keluarga miskin, suami sudah tidak ada, sudah meninggal, dengan anak 7 orang, jadi masih kecil, anak-anak masih kecil, jadi masih butuh perhatian, pendidikan, terus masih mau butuh sekolah, perlindungan juga, jadi masih sangat membutuhkan itu.
Maria does not have a permanent job. She helps neighbors with their crops, such as corn, during harvest time. 4 of her children live with her. 1 is being taken care of by an orphanage in Jakarta. 2 are working in Java and Bali. Maria relies on them for support. They send her up to 800,000 rupiah, or around $48 a month.
Kalau dapat juga pasti hanya untuk makan minum. Makan minum saja juga tidak cukup banyak-banyak begini. Jadi ya bersyukurlah ada bantuan dari pemerintah.
Her eldest son is in his final year at the state-run Kupang Polytechnic, majoring in forestry on a scholarship. Her 5th child, Hani Olivia Guterres, has been selected by the local government to attend junior high school at a community school in Kupang. Sekolah Rakyat is a flagship program under President Prabowo Subianto that offers free boarding for children from poor families across Indonesia.
Itu semua nanti pemerintah yang atur. Jadi sampai sekarang walaupun baru beberapa bulan, tapi sudah sangat terbantu.
Hani is on a year-end break with her family. During the semester, she lives at the boarding school.
Kangen karena di sana kayak sudah jam makan siang itu sepi, seru. Jam istirahat semua tidur sepi. Aku sangat beruntung karena dapat sekolah gratis. Saya juga mau adik-adik saya dapat sekolah seperti begitu. Aku bercita-cita jadi kuat, maunya saya sekolah baik-baik supaya menggapai cita-cita dengan baik. Untuk mama, semoga saya bisa berhasil supaya bisa membahagiakan mama.
The government is also helping to rebuild her house with bricks. Her original home was made of wooden slats with a thatch roof. It was falling apart.
Rumah tidak layak huni, jadi waktu banyak yang sampai di sekolah bilang Prabowo selain dari jemput anak untuk sekolah, rumah yang tidak layak huni juga nanti akan diperbaiki.
President Prabowo has said that the current neoliberal free market capitalist system has not given fair opportunities to everyone. Since taking office in October 2024, he has launched a number of social programs. Like the signature Free Meals program, aimed to create 30,000 kitchens, employing up to 1.5 million workers, and provide free food for millions of school children, toddlers, and pregnant women. The red and white cooperatives are intended to provide cheap loans and subsidize goods to rural villages.
Usually, the son of a poor peasant will be a poor peasant. The son of a garbage collector will be a garbage collector. The son of a street hawker will be a street hawker. This is what we call in the Global South the circle of poverty. I'm determined to break the circle. I'm determined that the son of the poorest should not be poor. They must be given equal opportunity.
Pemerintahan baru sekarang di bawah Pak Prabowo punya mindset ekonomi yang berbeda dibandingkan sebelumnya, dan pemerintahan berpendapat kalau program tersebut bisa diimplementasikan dengan sukses, itu akan mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi jadi 8% ya. Itu yang kita tunggu karena kita sudah masuk pada tahun kedua, dan tentu sudah waktu yang tepat juga untuk melihat apakah program-program yang dijanjikan oleh pemerintahan tersebut, pemerintahan Presiden Prabowo itu memang betul-betul akan mendorong atau menopang pertumbuhan ekonomi kita atau tidak gitu.
But the populist programs are not without controversies. The $10 billion free meals program was linked to over 11,000 cases of food poisoning in the last year. Funding shifts to finance the program have also reduced budgets for health, education, and provincial governments like East Nusa Tenggara. In 2025, the budget for the province was cut by 184 billion rupiah, or around $11 million.
Di NTT ini dari data SSGI itu kita menemukan 37% anak NTT menderita stunting, belum lagi gizi buruk dan lain-lain. Nah, kalau 37% berarti antara 3 anak, 1 anaknya stunting. Nah, logika itu yang harus kita pakai untuk melihat tentang apa sih yang kebutuhan dasar masyarakat NTT.
You talk to like 10 parents, 5 of them will say that, yeah, the government has helped us. We can save a little bit of money. Our children can get free meals in the school. But the other will probably say that, well, that's not definitely helpful. Yes, they have access to free meals, but, you know, there are still other costs that we need to bear as a household. I think the initiative to have 80,000 cooperatives across Indonesia is not a bad idea, but we don't know how the cooperatives will perform. We don't know whether they can be held accountable on how they distribute the funds. They'll just lend money to people without assessing the credit risk, and that will contribute to the non-performing loans ratio nationwide. At the end of the day, in order to prove that the government has actually come up with good policies to address inequality, is to actually talk about numbers.
A common critique is how these populist programs will continue to be funded.
The government has to think about how to finance the expansions of social insurance, social protection, right, and better infrastructure, better investment and business climate. Of course, from the fiscal side of things, Indonesian government could improve in terms of increasing their tax collection efforts, making sure that people pay taxes, they don't evade tax, make sure that they register to pay tax.
Orang super kaya itu harus dikenakan pajak kekayaan sebesar 2% dari total asetnya. Dan kita menghitung kalau dari 50 orang super kaya itu saja, kalau mereka dikenakan pajak setahunnya, pajak kekayaan ya 2%, maka jumlahnya itu bisa mencapai 81 triliun. Maka itu bisa mengcover pembiayaan MBG untuk tahun 2025 misalkan.
And I think another issue that the government is still trying to figure out is how to attract more foreign direct investment to boost the economic growth. There is still a lot of bureaucratic bottlenecks, a lot of licensing problems on the ground. Businesses face issue with the customs, for example. So I think there is a mismatch between what the government has rolled out on paper and what is happening on the ground.
In the East Nusa Tenggara province, the province is choosing a more sustainable path to development.
Sampai saat ini kami masih moratorium untuk penambangan. Jadi tidak ada tambang yang dibuka di Nusa Tenggara Timur. Ini karena biasa kontrolnya tinggi sekali. Nah, di antara semua potensi laut ini, yang baru akan dikembangkan itu adalah nanti sekarang ini adalah garam. Pemerintah pusat, Pak Prabowo Subianto, melalui Menteri Kelautan Perikanan, itu sudah menunjuk dan sekarang lagi dikerjakan, NTT ini akan menjadi salah satu sentra garam terbesar di negeri ini. Tapi kita dorong mereka jadi pengusaha, dan dengan berusaha itu dia bisa hidup dengan layak dan benar.
Local entrepreneur Gasper Tiran, or Uncle Bay as he's popularly known, is a household name in East Nusa Tenggara. He runs a successful restaurant chain selling spiced smoked pork called sebabi. It's a popular dish in the predominantly Christian province.
Sekolah juga sama, makanya Tuhan kasih tempat ini.
The recipe to create the succulent dish is tightly guarded, and his main restaurant is always busy. With his business, he managed to send his children to university.
Anak kalau orang tua miskin, anaknya harus belajar untuk jadi sukses. Jangan miskin terus. Ada pemalas semua. Nggak mau kerja itu dapat memang, tapi itu nggak boleh. Kalau mau jadi sukses itu butuh proses. Karena sukses membutuhkan visi untuk melihat, iman untuk percaya, keberanian untuk melangkah. Jadi kegagalan itu kita harus bangkit.
Indonesia will need more people like Uncle Bay as it targets an 8% GDP growth, with a goal to reach high income status by 2045. But whether all can share in the country's riches will be the challenge.
Saya kira kalau ke depan pemerintah bisa membenahi banyak hal, terutama dalam hal ekonomi, bagaimana memastikan lapangan kerja tersedia, harga-harga terkendali gitu, dan bisa mengontrol tidak ada pemutusan PHK yang besar ya. Mungkin situasi akan lebih stabil ya. Tapi kalau misalnya pengangguran meningkat, lapangan kerja sulit, harga-harga meningkat, atau misalnya pasokan pangannya terbatas karena ada perubahan iklim dan segala macam, ya tentu itu juga akan menjadi PR dan bisa saja menciptakan ketidakpuasan dan instabilitas politik.
Jadi statistik itu sebuah euforia melihat wah ini ada pertumbuhan ekonomi cukup tinggi bla 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 bla. Tapi coba dilihat pertumbuhan ekonomi itu siapa yang manfaatkan? Berapa persen kelompok menengah dan kelompok bawah itu memanfaatkannya?